Absolutely.
We'll start the webinar in about 1 minute. Good morning, all. Welcome to the Arizona Ontrack informational webinar. This is sponsored by the Arizona School Administrators. We're a nonprofit organization of about 1,400 public school administrators in Arizona. And when I say public school, that includes traditional public and charter school administrators. And we're happy today to present this to you. And in case you discover that this funding program out of the governor's office would help you present opportunities for the children who attend your school. And if you're interested in the Arizona School Administrators, you can go to our website, www.azsa.org, and you can find out more information about joining our organization. And I'm not going to talk more about that right now. The website will give you that information, or you could also email me by going to that website. But I want to introduce the brain power behind this organization among many people behind this this program today. But this person is really the impetus for it, and that's former superintendent of public instruction in the state of Arizona. That was a little while ago, but not too long ago. And that's Lisa Graham Keegan. So I'm going to turn this over to her, and she'll introduce her team, and they'll give you the details that you've joined this webinar to hear. Lisa, will you take it away? You're muted.
That rookie move, Mark. Thank you so much. 20 years ago. So in your time span and mine, maybe not very long ago. I'm sure for a lot of younger teachers that feels like forever. So it's an honor for me to be chairing Governor Ducey's Arizona Ontrack Summer Camp Initiative. And we'll talk about that in just a second, but I also want to introduce two other people who are going to be helping us with this webinar. One is a wonderful friend and colleague I think most of you may know. Cassie Breacher has been in education for over 13 years, starting as a classroom teacher, and then she was a major philanthropic organization in Arizona leading their education efforts over the years, and 5 years ago started Beyond Strategy, which is really one of the finest consulting organizations I've ever been honored to work with. So Cassie is here and she will be helping me out, and with us is Megan Velasquez, who is working with Cassie, has her own educational management or measurement company. So the three of us will get us through here. And so let me just go through a few logistics. We're doing this on Zoom. There is a Q&A opportunity, and I would like to present all the way through the deck, all the way through our slides, if we could. As you come up with a question, please type it into the Q&A. Megan and Cassie are going to be collecting those questions, and we're going to put them into groups because we anticipate the same question may come, that's something that we've missed. We'll collect those, and at the end of the presentation, we'll start the Q&A. So for those of you who are frequent Zoomers, we're not in the chat. We're on the Q&A. If you're in the chat, we'll see you, but the questions should go in that Q&A, and then we'll address them in bunches. So Cassie, have I missed anything about how we're going to work through here?
Nope, you got it all.
I've got it all. Love that. And let me just apologize for the car. Literally driving from today, we're in Colorado on our way to Nebraska, Minnesota, and I so appreciate being able to do this here. Technology, right? It's crazy. So here we are, Arizona Ontrack summer camps. When I was contacted a little while ago by the governor's office about this initiative, I was delighted. As you all know, this has been a crazy time, and I just want to thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for all the work that has gone into keeping our schools together, keeping children as close as they could be in schooling. We know we've lost a lot. This summer is an opportunity to turn around, get back on a trajectory for schooling. And the governor's desire here is to amplify your ability to do that. In particular, to amplify the ability of lower income students to access programs they maybe couldn't access before. There are different pots of money available for different things these days, and the governor is very much wanting to get you to partner with you in these summer camp initiatives, broaden access, et cetera. So let's go through how that's going to happen. And first, a little bit about where we are. I don't have to tell any of you any of this, but this study that Mackenzie brought out last summer was daunting for all of us. I know our children are behind. Their children in poverty are certainly more behind than the rest of our children. Black students fell considerably. We absolutely need to do everything that we can to get back on track. So if we go to the next slide, let's talk about how we're approaching this. What are we doing? So Governor Ducey has been very clear that he is looking for camp to do two things: academic progress for certain, and he is calling out the areas of mathematics, literacy, and civics. In addition to that, we're asking for the kinds of learning and experiences that students have together that get them ready for in-class learning again. So much that the students have lost has been social interaction. I don't need to tell anybody. They've been interacting as avatars for a couple of years now. Children back together. Adventure camp. We really want this to be fun. We really want this to be something that students are enjoying and that you're enjoying as teachers. We're asking that schools or that your teachers are enjoying. We're asking that we really honor the time of teachers who really just need a mega nap at this point and are giving up their summers to come back in and get students ready by participating in summer camp. We're asking that their salaries are as generous as possible and that we really are honoring that time. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing in summer camp. So at least one of the academic areas, the key academic areas, math, literacy, civics, understanding you select your own curriculum, you're selecting your own program, and we'll talk a little bit about some program that the governor's office is offering if you need that. In addition, credit recovery, particularly we understand for our 12th graders who may not have graduated or amassed enough credits to graduate, credit recovery really important, kids who are moving on from grade to grade, and also those behaviors and attitudes that support academic achievement back in school, et cetera. So we want to know you're doing that, plus an adventure, enrichment, and ready for school, emotional, social learning, all of these things. We're asking in the application, which of these are you supplying? We're expecting at least 2 of those. We just want to know so that parents can also know what's available at your camp. In addition to schools, we are asking our youth groups, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all of our youth serving organizations, we're asking them to consider a camp and to get into partnership with schools. So there could be separate camps, maybe the camping experience is a week, and then there's a partner with an academic experience, and parents are going to be signing up for you independently. So the parents can make those choices. But we really do want some of those adventure opportunities as well for summer camp. They might be shorter. They might not be as academic, but they certainly are going to be monitored, and we're going to be looking for student growth, progress, and how students are doing, confidence level, things like that you guys are tracking all the time. But we really are believing that those adventure camps have a real strength to offer this summer. Cassie, did you want to add to any of these?
The only thing that I would add and emphasize, and we'll spend a little bit of time on this in a couple of slides, is that Lisa mentioned in particular those seniors or high school students who are looking for credit recovery. But on the very front and early end of this, we're also talking about children in that pre-K realm who we know at this point they've spent half their lives or more under pandemic sort of conditions, and there's a real strong case to be made for the impact that these kinds of experiences over the summer can have for our youngest children who are getting ready to enter school. So we'll get a little bit more specific about that later, but wanted to underline that right now.
Yes, that's a great emphasis. Cassie, let's go on to the next slide. Who can apply? Who can apply to provide camp? So A, B, and C rated public schools, district and charter. Public schools that are not yet rated with verification for quality. D and F rated schools can formally partner with another school, a higher rated school. We want to make sure everybody's got an opportunity. And then, as I said before, nonprofit organizations that provide youth programming as part of their mission. We are hoping we'll be partners, and we do already have some applications from our youth groups. Let's go ahead, Cassie. Non-negotiables. So here it is. As Cassie just reminded us, pre-K. So rising kindergartners, my favorite term, through 12th graders who are still needing credits for full graduation. This is camp in person or hybrid, no fully virtual camp. Obviously, we're wanting kids back together. An academic plus focus, and we've talked about that. Certainly the academics, and we're hoping a lot of you all ordinarily have two different camps as it is. I know a lot of times schools will offer their academic program, particularly kids that are behind, do need credit. And then they also have fun enrichment activities, et cetera. What we're hoping these dollars allow you to do is to bring as many kids as possible into the enrichment program. Lots of the students that you're serving oftentimes may not be paying for an academic camp. What we are asking you to make the judgment about who is vulnerable and who can be brought into camp by supporting that camp and having families not be at cost to themselves. So think about that. This is academics plus. How do we make this really fun and provide those enrichment activities to everybody? Minimum of 2 weeks for camp. The only exception to that is going to be a potentially residential camps, short 4 to 7 day camps that camping groups might offer. Our organizations that are ordinarily involved in camping, wanting to offer that opportunity to students who don't have it or haven't ever had that. So registration is at no cost to eligible campers. And as we've discussed, that judgment is really yours. Who needs this? And their registration, they will not be charged for that. Transportation to eligible campers within reason. Cassie, I am having a heck of a time. I'm sorry. Can you read these next items? They're really small for me.
Absolutely. So this middle section here really talks about the kinds of environmental factors that we want to make sure are present at all of the camps. So we've talked about registration fees, transportation, and meal and nutrition services are at no cost to the campers who attend. We also want to make sure that there are protocols in place related to your staffing, to your facilities, and your IT infrastructure that really ensure student safety is front and center there. And we want to make sure that there's supervision and interaction with verified safe adults. So this has a couple of components to it. First component is we want to make sure that any adult who's interacting with children from a camp standpoint has all of their fingerprinting, the background checking, all of the safety protocols to make sure that that person is a safe person to be around children. And we also want to make sure that at no time is any one child alone with any one adult unsupervised. And then the last item here in this middle section is to make sure that there is a maximum of 35 campers to one teacher or instructor ratio. Now we'll get into a few more details around how we would ideally like to see smaller ratios than that. We also understand that every program, every camp is going to have what works best in terms of their model, but at a maximum we're allowing a 35 to 1 camper to instructor ratio. Lisa, you want me to keep going to this final section
here? Sure, that's great.
Okay.
Thanks, Cassie.
So then in terms of this final section, we really wanted to give you some insight in terms of the kind of logistical non-negotiables. Those include marketing and promoting your camp, as well as making sure that you're facilitating registration on your website and or printed materials. We know that each community access and sign up is going to look a little bit different. So we just want to make sure that you have a plan in place for promoting the camp that you're offering, and then also being able to have families sign up. We also have a handful of federal reporting requirements, and in part, those are due in large part as a result of the original funding source where this money is coming from. So those reporting requirements include things like attendance, the student outcomes on some of the items that we touched on earlier back related to academic support improvement. We'll ask that you sign a contract and submit forms like your state and federal W-9s, things like that, so that we can complete payment. And then finally, one of the most important components from an impact measurement standpoint is how are we going to measure the experience for students, their families, and then teachers or instructors. So we'll have the only universal measurement tool that we'll use across the entire camp experience is an AZ Ontrack survey. And so we'll ask that that's administered at each site. So those are the sort of nuts and bolts of those non-negotiables.
Great, Cassie, thank you very much. Let's go on to the next slide. So here is what obviously we are looking for. Geographic reach. Obviously, we want to be all over the state of Arizona where there are students. We want them to have access. Participation. This is both from our schools and our youth groups and students and families. So we are looking for a very high participation rate. The governor has very high goals, hundreds of thousands of kids, and we share those goals. I think that part of the importance of this whole initiative is to remind families students can be back together, they can be in school settings, they can be having adventures together, and that should be among a family's highest priorities this summer. So we really, really appreciate you all coming together and offering these opportunities in as many places as possible. Student outcomes. As we've said before, we are looking for measurement of how students progress. We are looking to you to develop what those measurements are, share with us what you're going to be using, and we are collecting data on student outcomes. This is an opportunity to know what kind of progress students made. We obviously understand we're not making up 2 years of what we've been through here in summer camp, but we're looking for a trajectory. We want to know how you're going to gauge that for yourselves and how we're going to share that out. And maybe you had a particularly great experience. You want to relay that to us, and we can share whatever curriculum or program that you had. These next few years are as important as this moment, as we learn what is it that's really getting kids re-engaged. So we're looking for all of that data. Parent and caregiver satisfaction. We really want parents to be happy with being back in school, to really be enjoying this experience, to choose those experiences that are really working for them. And then teacher and student experience. So we really, really want these to be great experiences for our teachers. We're so grateful for their time and their creativity here. And then students themselves, we're hoping that this experience really, really takes away a lot of the anxiety about not having been in school for so long and begins to feel, for kids who have been there before, begins to feel like a normal environment, one very comfortable for students, very energizing and safe, and for new students that they really are excited to be entering schooling. How do I apply? Ontrack.az.gov. Applications came up a week ago Monday, and Cassie, I don't know what the number is today, but we have a good number of applicants.
Yep, so we have, let's see, I think we have close to 30 applications in. We have another 30 to 35 that are started but not in. And we have more than, from those 30 applications that are in, we have more than 500, I think close to 600 individual campsites or locations that are being at least proposed around the state.
Fabulous. So those of you who are administrators will have done the math there and breathed a little sigh of relief. You do not have to apply uniquely for every individual site. As a district or an LEA, if you're a charter system, you in this first application round, you're going to go through and you're going to fill out the application and let us know how many camps and where, etc. As you're completing the application for each campsite, that's more a matter of where is the camp and what is it offering, in such a way that families can see it and then make a selection. And we'll talk about that later. Families can apply only to you. They don't need to come through our application site when we get to families and when they're going to start to apply for camp, etc. I just want you to know, because it's an often asked, very good question, do families have to sign on with us? No, they can't sign up with us. They sign up with you. We refer them to you. So, but you can apply to offer camp at that site. When can you apply? Now. Now, please. The more time we have to take a look at everything and get these camps up online and give this information to parents, I think the more likely that we're really going to have an overwhelming participation. So funding's being awarded first come, first served basis. And I'll tell you, Governor Ducey, everywhere he goes and every time I see him, says, I want you to make me find more money. Make me find more money. Huh, I love it. I'm happy to have that charge. So first come, first served, and hopefully we send everybody into the couches looking for more money for this. Application review is happening in 3 cycles. So we're opening up a window, if you will, every 2 weeks. This is because of the way we're going to vet. So the first application cycle that started last Monday is going to end next Monday. As you see there, close 21st and notification by April 5th. The second window will open up as the first one closes. So it's going to open up, I think, on the 21st, Cassie. I think that's an overlap day. And then closes on April 4th. You can see the notification date is a couple weeks later on the 19th. The last cycle closes on April 18th, notification May 3rd. That last cycle, as you notice, getting awfully close to the beginning of camp. So the earlier we can get these applications in, the better, but we do understand some decisions have to be made about staffing and some other decisions that might push you into those later cycles. Just know it stays open that long. Cassie, did you want to add anything to that?
Just to underscore that funding is being awarded on a first come, first served basis. So we are, marshaling the person power to make sure we get thorough, but also quick reviews for all of you, and would strongly encourage you, if you are considering applying, that you do so on the earlier side. The other thing to consider is that if you are going to be applying in partnership with another organization, another school, for instance, that those are, we would look very favorably on collaborations that help to address those academic components and the enrichment and adventure components that Lisa mentioned earlier. And that in the event that happens, only one of the organizations needs to submit an application. So if you are a school or a district, for instance, that's partnering with a nonprofit organization to provide afternoon programming that meets those enrichment or adventure components, then only one of the entities in the partnership needs to apply.
Right. that, and let me add to that, Cassie, that we anticipate for those of you who have those good relationships with youth organizations, oftentimes they're providing maybe after school for you, et cetera, or you just have a good, strong relationship, you can apply. One of you can apply. As Cassie said, you don't need to do both. It is also possible for youth groups and schools both to get their camps approved and to informally agree that they're going to suggest a camp or an experience to families, et cetera. So we're trying to make this as easy as possible. And we're trying to accept all manner of the ways that you want to apply, but we do want to make this easy. And as Cassie pointed out, should you form a partnership that's formal in that way, just one of you needs to make the full application. Let's go on to how much funding you will receive. And Cassie, you and I can talk through this. And I want to make sure we make this clear. Differences in pricing are based primarily on length of the day and student to teacher ratio. So, for example, all tiers have to address either one of the, at least one, not either, at least one of the academic areas and an adventure component. So tier 1, which is $50 per full student day, ratio is 15 students to 1 teacher or less, and a 7-hour full day. The half day component for that you can see there. If you have a half day, $25 and 3.5 hours in that day, still at 15 to 1. Tier 2, you can see, is $40 for the full day, 16 to 20 students to 1 teacher, and a 6-hour full day or a 3-hour half day. And then half of that, obviously, for the half day version of tier 2. And we did put in a 5-hour full day. We did get asked about that. That's $30, and that's at a higher teacher to student ratio. So that's possible. But this is what we are basing funding on. And I don't know, Cassie, if I missed anything in there that you think will clarify that more. All of this will be available to you. You don't have to write it down. We'll, it's in our FAQ documents as well. Anything else, Cassie? It's pretty straightforward. Why don't we go?
Yeah, I would say
Cassie.
it's fairly straightforward, and there's a budget template that we've provided as part of the application process to help. So you'll be able to calculate your expenses in a line by line kind of way. In particular, that include those items that we mentioned earlier: transportation, meals and nutrition services, any sort of supplies and materials, staffing time, etc. And in addition to that, know that if your funding requirements exceed what we've described here in terms of the $50, $25, all of these different levels, there is a specific question on the application where you can indicate what you are asking for above and beyond this daily allocation with a rationale for why. So for instance, if you provide services for students in a particularly rural part of Arizona and transportation costs exceed what we might see in one of our more densely populated areas, and that then causes you to exceed the total student per day allocation, then you would tell us how much more do you need and for what, and that will be considered in the vetting process for potential approval as well.
Yep. And that may also happen, by the way, with residential camps, which will be a limited opportunity, but that's an extraordinary cost, and we will we'll consider that differently. So let's go on to the next slide. And how will funds be dispersed? So this is important to you for running these camps. You're going to make an initial application to us, and then we're going to say, great, you're pre-approved. Here's some paperwork. Nothing you haven't done before. Really, really important to get all of that paperwork filled out. As Cassie said, we do have forms for you, making it very clear. You're going to tell us how many students you think you're going to serve. On approval of all the documentation as it comes in, 50% of your projection will be funded to your camp so that you can get started and do the things you need to do to get started. The second day camp attendance, you take your enrollment, that number will get you the second 50% of your projection. If that number is considerably off, then we just need to have a conversation about that last 50%, but we anticipate it's in a range. The second 50% is coming to you after submittal of that second day enrollment. And that's pretty straightforward. That is coming from the governor's office, and your contracts will be there with them. And that will come directly into the LEA. Cassie, anything else? Do you want to move ahead?
We can keep moving.
Right on time, almost. I had a 30-minute goal for explanation, but let's keep going. Professional development. I do want to talk about this a little bit. This is in development right now with the governor's office. The governor's office is wanting both students and teachers and all of you as systems to have a great head start on the fall. They're wanting to provide as much access to program as you might need for this summer. So in partnership with professional development providers, they are going to be offering some major curricula and professional training at no cost to systems and teachers. And that is going to happen later this spring. And those details are just being finalized now. So these are nationally known, really popular programs right now. The governor's office is going to make some of those available. We're very excited about that teachers will not have to pay for that. You will not have to pay for that if you decide that that would be a really enhancing experience for your staff, particularly in advance of summer camp. For those of you that are at venture camps, youth groups that might be looking for some good, strong academic curriculum, these professional development programs will come with curriculum as well. It will not be at cost to you. You'll be able to use that curriculum. And oftentimes, some of the providers are allowing that curriculum to be used right on into the school year for the following year or so. So those are great opportunities. In addition, we are going to have sort of a clearinghouse. Lots of people have been coming to us and saying, hey, we want to help. We've got a professional development or a curriculum that we really think would be enhancing either for this summer or for people to consider for the fall, because we do know a lot of schools are looking at their curriculum now, having gone through some online learning and more opportunity than we were looking for to do things differently, quite frankly. But a lot of folks are saying, I really would like to just offer that opportunity, and we want to offer a special deal for this. So we're going to let those companies just list themselves, and you can look in there for things you might be interested in. Could be there's a provider in there that you've been looking at anyway, and you can use this as an opportunity. So we're really happy about that. And Cassie, we're at 10:32. So I think that is everything we were initially going to share. Cassie, if you have anything to wrap up, I do see we've got lots of questions, so we can try to get to those.
No, I think this is the perfect time. I know that Megan and team have been working hard to answer some of our questions in written format as they're coming in. And I also know that we have a handful of other things that we can answer whole group. As a reminder, if you have questions that are lingering, make sure to pop those into the Q&A bubble so that we can track those. If you've put something into the chat and you haven't seen a response yet, if you could also put that into the Q&A so that we can make sure to keep a running record there, that will be helpful. And I can answer really quickly the most recent question that came in, which is, will the slideshow be shared? And we'll make sure to send this deck and also a more detailed FAQ to all participants who have registered for this webinar. So know that you will be receiving this information after the fact. So Megan, how do you want to approach the questions? Should we start at the top and go to the bottom, or group them?
Yep. So I would say we've got a group of questions around eligibility. So student eligibility, there are lots of questions I'm seeing come in specifically related to enrolling students outside of a district. So if I'm a district, do I have to accept students from outside of my typical enrollment boundaries? What about homeschool and private school students? Are they eligible? So I would say, Cassie, let's start with student eligibility and enrollment expectations, and then move to questions related to application host eligibility.
Great. Cassie, let me start with this, because this is a decision that was just recently made, a good decision. So you know, all students in Arizona are eligible. So students in public school, students in private school, students who've never been to school before, if they're pre-K through just about graduated senior, they're eligible for this program. And you don't need to make any other determinations. Students can go wherever they would like. They can go within the district that they're reside. They can go outside of district. They can, district, you can invite in any students that you like from anywhere. We're not, it's a completely open program, totally up to families as to what they choose. Just one caveat as a reminder, the private schools themselves are ineligible to offer the camp program to apply as a provider. They can offer their facility and work with a partner that's a public school or a youth group, but the students are eligible. And anything else, Megan or Cassie, we need to add about eligibility?
On the student side, I think that covers it. I'll raise it if we get anything else in the chat related to student eligibility.
Megan, I just thought of one thing.
Lisa and Cassie.
I was thinking about financial eligibility, and we've been asked this before, and I alluded to it earlier. This is up to you all. Who is vulnerable? Vulnerability comes in so many ways that there's some vulnerability that is making it less likely that a student would be able to attend a summer camp experience. It's either financial, it's a special educational need, it's an academic loss that was pretty severe. You all are getting these children coming to you. You will see them. That is your call. So we're not asking the question. We're just saying we take whoever is vulnerable and apply this Arizona Ontrack funding and program to those students. Go ahead, Megan.
I was just going to actually pass back off to you and Cassie, Lisa, with we've got a category of questions related to eligibility, specifically when it comes to folks who are a district entity with multiple camps. So we've answered some of these in the chat. You do need to have the full picture of the camps that will be offered at the time you submit application. However, Cassie and Lisa, can you tell participants a little bit more about the idea of partnership? So if I have a D or F rating, what does it mean to partner with either another school, district, or 501(c)(3) provider in order to be eligible for this opportunity?
Right. So, Cassie, I'll give that a stab, and you can come in and and remind people what might be possible here. So, what we're looking for is assurance that if the rating on your school is a D or an F, assurance that the summer is going to serve to enhance capacity of the school itself, the students in the school. So, you're going to bring in partners that are well versed in running a high quality school, a youth group that is well versed in high quality youth activities. And you're just going to explain to us who they are and how that's going to happen and how you think that's going to enhance the experience for the school itself and primarily for the students this summer. Cassie, did you want to add to that?
Just in case it's helpful to have it be a little bit more concrete, this could look a handful of different ways. And you know, these examples are meant to be examples of, for instance, and not limiting. So partnership applications are not mandatory, to the question that I saw just come through the chat. But you might be, a school, an individual school, and you know that you've got the academic component of your programming down. You'd like to be able to offer adventure or enrichment in some way. And in order to do that, perhaps you decide that you would like to bring in an arts program or a dance program or a scientific experimentation program. Boys and Girls Club is down the road, etc. So know that if you decide that you would like to supplement your academic work in that way, you can do so through partnership with others. One thing to underline a couple of times is if you are a D or F-rated school, then a partnership is mandatory in that instance, because we want to make sure that camp is accessible to all students, no matter where they might access camp, whether that is a D or F-rated school. And we also want to make sure that our D and F-rated schools have really strong partnerships helping to meet the needs of students in their camps.
Excellent. And I'm seeing a group of questions start to come in related to transportation. So are there specific expectations about handling transportation, say if students are 50 miles plus from the site, or if I am a smaller entity like an independent charter school that has some limitations when it comes to funding? So Cassie and Lisa, can you tell us more about the expectation related to transportation, please?
Yes, so the verbiage is within reason. And Cassie, we've talked about this a little bit. You want to talk about what that process would be?
Sure. So we're really wanting two things to know. The first is we're really leaving it up to each individual camp to determine what is within reason, because we know what might be within reason in Central Phoenix or downtown Tucson may look different from Marana or some other part of the state. And so we're really asking, or we're leaving it up to our individual sites to determine what is within reason. That being said, also know that from an accessibility, access in general standpoint, we really want to make sure that the most number of children possible are able to access camp experiences. So if transportation expenses are something that is limiting, that's a limiting factor in terms of your application, your funding, et cetera, we would strongly encourage you to use that additional funding request to address needs related to transportation expenses.
Cassie, I wanted to add one more thing to this. That's perfect. And for those of you who haven't been watching some of what's been going on with transportation innovation after the last couple of legislative sessions, there have been some grants around the state on this. And the grants have been to places in rural Arizona and in Phoenix, and just very innovative new ways of efficient transportation for students. We're going to start putting some of that up online as well on a portal, so that as you're considering how to do this transportation, these ideas maybe can inspire you a little bit, and this can be maybe a little bit easier than you might have done in the past. We're really gratified by the number of innovative companies that are coming up, and mostly by the creativity of school systems who are bringing these to us. So we'll, as we learn about them, we'll post them, and if you're doing them, please share them with us. We'd like to know.
Excellent. There is a group of questions related to funding. So some more details would be really helpful related to what is inbounds and out of bounds in terms of the funding utilization. So for example, does the application allow for indirect costs to be covered? Can the application include a request for funding to pay for professional development of teachers? Let's start there, and then we'll have a couple more.
Cassie, I'm going to let you talk about the professional development and what the calculus has been on that. I will tell you that we're keeping in mind, those of you who have and it's almost all of you at this point, been managing your federal funds. The federal requirements really, they seek to minimize any indirect sort of non-specific cost. We would highly encourage most of your costs to go into specified categories, salary support, materials, supplies, etc. That we won't offer on the budget itself. We're not going to offer a very high, if any, sort of indirect. So you're going to want to be thinking in terms of the actual budget items, staffing, supplies, transportation, food, those kinds of things when you're filling out those budgets. And Cassie, I'm trying to remember the calculus on professional development, or Megan, you may know that as well, how we made that determination.
Yep. So that determination was made. Let me speak to what Lisa just finished. So there are, and this gets at a couple of other questions that I saw come through. The expense categories that we've identified essentially as eligible categories, to the extent that we've identified them from a budget standpoint, are materials and supplies, meals and nutrition, staffing, transportation, instructional staff, support staff, and building staff. So where you might see indirect type expenses categorized under one lump area in other applications that you may have submitted for, we're asking that you separate those out and group them to the extent possible within one of those categories. And part of that is a reporting requirement in terms of dollars utilized. So to the professional development question in particular, part of the, I guess, intelligence, for lack of a better word, or the assumptions that were built into those daily rates, the $50 for a full day, the 30, 40, et cetera, assumes that would cover up to 2 days of professional development, compensated professional development for your instructional staff, your teachers, your counselors, your instructors, et cetera. So all of those expenses related to up to 2 days of professional development have been factored into those per day student expense, those funding allowables. And again, if there is some sort of additional requirement above and beyond that would go above and beyond that daily allocation, then you're welcome to include those expenses and then the rationale when you're prompted to in the application.
Excellent. We've got a couple of questions coming in related to measurement. So some questions related to expected tools for measuring student outcomes, the creation and administration of the Ontrack survey, some support structures. Cassie, do you want me to talk about that group briefly?
Sure, please do.
All right. So when it comes to measurement, schools and camps that are applying will report how they intend to track academic progress for campers. So you are encouraged to do that with tools that already align to what you use in your regular school year practices. So you'll be able to report that. As far as who is creating and administering surveys, the survey will be created and administered through the governor's office team. So there will be links and QR codes that are generated and passed to all camp hosts, with the expectation that those links and QR codes are circulated to families, parents, staff, and students who participate. Add up any sort of digital survey or paper version, you'll be able to take advantage of that in that way. And then a question related to survey or outcome support. Most of that will be collected at the site level to ensure that measurement is as closely aligned to your regular practices as possible. If there are specific questions, there will be an opportunity to get some help desk type support as you're figuring out what your measurement strategy will be. We'll send information out to that to all registered camps as soon as that becomes available. And it looks like,
Megan,
yeah, Lisa, go.
Can we add to that so if a system is using one set of measurement for summer camp, that's perfectly fine. You do what you do. Just let us know. Also, we are asking, and Megan, maybe you can talk about sort of the Here I Come report. So there's two things here. One is we're going to collect the data that you all offer up to us, and obviously then we're going to find a way to look at what did progress look like in different sets of measurement over time, and that report will take a while. We would also like for all families and the teachers of incoming students to have an immediate report and a template for which I think we're creating, Megan, some ideas about a Here I Come report for students. We don't have to call it that when they're in high school because it's probably too youngish sounding. But what did you observe in this child at camp? I think most of you do this over the summer anyway, but we are looking to give as much information as we can in some major categories about the student's experience, about the camper's experience, and to have that ready at the end of camp. So Megan, maybe that's a pretty good description of what we're thinking at this point.
Yeah, I would say so. And so the details of that report that Lisa is mentioning are still being worked out, but that is a support structure that will be offered. So you don't have to worry about creating that. There will be some template options available to your camp staff to be able to complete those on the campers that you serviced and supported. And then those would go to families who then would be encouraged to share them with the students' teachers in the fall. All right.
And also just to jump in.
We've got a question around.
No, go ahead,
Cassie. I'm seeing a couple more questions related to ratio. So I wanted to offer some clarification on ratio. So is there a minimum? So Cassie, I think that folks heard you describe a maximum of 1 to 35. Is there a minimum ratio of students to teachers or instructors? And what about varying ratio? So if my intent is, for example, I've seen in my data that kids in my system are really struggling with math. And so I want to offer a 1 to 15 ratio while they're with us for math. But then in enrichment and increase that ratio to 1 to 20 or 1 to 30. How does that variability in ratio impact the funding that I could expect to receive?
That's a really great question. So two things to underline. The first one is, again, there are no minimums in terms of ratio expectations. So we really leave that up to you all to determine, especially knowing that that will look different. Those ideal ratios will look different based on children's age, based on the content area, based on the needs, etc. When it comes to the activities that you do across the day or the work that you have, the things that you have children engaging with throughout the day might have different ratios depending on the kind of activity or item that they're engaged with. I think, and Lisa, you correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I believe our encouragement would be to apply for the lowest ratio that you are going to offer to ensure that you have appropriate funding and staffing for that lowest ratio, knowing that during different parts of the day, the ratios might look different. Lisa, does that square with what you would say?
I think that's exactly what we've been discussing, that for the substantial portion of a student's day, and we understand these ratios shift depending on what you're doing, we're asking for what is that? And as Cassie said, if you plan an intense mathematics curriculum for which they're at that 20 or less, because that's usually how that kind of coursework will go. So again, we're asking for possible on target kind of estimation of what those ratios will be. And we're really looking for your understanding of, for the substantial part of the day and the primary work that you're doing with students in that critical area, what does that ratio look like? We're getting close. So Megan, we can let's try one more question, and then I want to remind everybody that all of these questions are going to be answered in writing. You are going to get these answers, the Q&A, as part of our FAQ. We're going to put these in the FAQ. These are great questions, by the way. We'll get them well answered. We'll put them in the FAQ, and you will also have this deck that we presented today. And of course, you can reach out to us and ask further questions if you need to.
I think, Lisa, in that spirit, the right thing to close us out on would be a recap of where do I apply, how do I apply, and what are the deadlines and the timelines that I should expect once my application is in.
Do you
Lisa,
do you want to go back to that
Sure.
slide? You apply now, or it's open now. And listen, we know this is a lot of work, particularly for those of you in large systems that are putting up a full collection of what your summer offerings will be. And we do hope that this conversation has given you a little bit more information, and that you're optimistic that this could allow you to expand service this summer. We is the outcome of this, that we're going to see a lot more kids in summer camp that might otherwise have happened because these funds and the advertising and everything that is going on, because that's available. So one more thing, and I want to make this clear because I think I alluded to it. When you are finally approved, each individual camp is going to show up on our site, on a site. Parents will see that if they're looking through us, and they will click on it, and they will go to you, to whatever person or mechanism you have assigned to summer camp. So we really want you to think about that, right? That could be a fall off point that we don't want to have happen. If parents reach out and that's an unanswered phone for a week or so, that's going to be a problem. So whatever information you give us to connect to you so parents can sign up, make sure that's a well-monitored connection. So I just want to throw that out there as well. So Megan, there it is. Thank you. Current cycle
Perfect,
ends on Monday, the 21st. Second cycle starts then and will end on the 4th of April. Next cycle, that last cycle starts on the 4th of April and will close on the 18th. And that is getting really close to camp. So we're anticipating that last cycle is maybe some cleanup, et cetera. People have to wait for unusual reasons to apply late. We don't anticipate many applications in that last cycle. So Cassie or Megan, do you have anything final? And Mark, I just want to say thank you so much. Mark, I've known you for decades, and there is not one single important juncture I can think of where you did not step in and say, hey, let us help. And this is so important. And for those of you who don't know, I've had about 100 people today. So thank you for all the work you're doing. And Cassie or Megan, I'll send it back to you, and you can send it back to Mark.
Great. The only other thing really quickly to note is that related to a question that just came through in the chat, when you sit down to do the application, have everything that you need ready to go. We'll give you an application that you can download and work on in a Word document format, but then you can copy and paste your responses into the application portal. The information that you see in front of you are our big next steps. For anyone who is a registered participant for today's session, we'll make sure you receive an FAQ and then also this deck. You can go to ontrack.az.gov now That gives you an FAQ there that will keep updated frequently, as well as a link to the application portal. And then if you have specific questions with either the application platform or questions that aren't answered in the FAQ, then you can email helpdesk@azontrack.com, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction in terms of those questions. All right, Mark, I think back to you.
Thank you all for attending today. And as Cassie said, there'll be an updated FAQ document coming to all of you, I'm assuming fairly soon. And we'll have a recording of this available by the end of the day as well as the slide deck. Hope this was helpful to all of you, and we appreciate your attendance. And this is going to be a program that can help Arizona students. So please provide these opportunities for our kids. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark.